Welcome back to episode 47 of the Top Loaded podcast. I'm very surprised my voice has survived for this day because I've just got back from the Emirates and it was a lovely game. Quick one to address. Obviously, there is no Harry today. We're just sending all our love to him with everything that's going on at the moment, but no doubt he'll hopefully be rejoining us next week for another great episode. Quickly, if you haven't already, go over to our Instagram because we are running a big giveaway for the London Card Show. We've got 2 VIP tickets, so go along, enter that. The instructions are in the bio before it, but good luck for that. It shuts 1st of Feb and it's a great little giveaway. But more importantly, got a very special guest this week, and it's a very good topic to talk about, especially with my Wenger just coming back from grading. Got a very great guest, and I know he sold Harry a ticket at the last show. Sadly, Harry can't be trying to butter it down anymore, but welcome very much. His Tickets and Slabs, welcome very much, because this is going to be a great one. And we've just spoke for 20 minutes anyway about tickets.
Yeah, we have. Look, thanks for inviting me on. And yeah, pleasure to be here. And yeah, let's talk tickets.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of people now, I know, well, opening topic is it's getting so much. I've seen a lot more people now talking about tickets and getting stuff graded. I think people really switching on now that it's actually quite a cool market and cool to get it slabbed up.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think when I kind of began, which was probably about 2.5 years ago, really, like collecting tickets, it was a funny one because I think people were, just really into cards at the time, and sort of it made sense. That's kind of what everyone was collecting, and there's a lot of interest in stuff like that. But like, I don't know, I just kind of like, being truthfully honest with you, card collecting can be pretty expensive. I'm not I'm not going to cast aspersions. Like, sometimes, the amount of money that you spend sort of with cards can kind of just get out of reach very quickly. So for me, like, tickets were just an avenue where it was just a lot cheaper, and I just started collecting things that were, I thought, pretty cool. So whether that was like a debut for, a well-known player, whether it was a kind of club debut. So, one of the earlier tickets that I got was, Thierry Henry's Arsenal debut, or it might have been going and looking for, Cristiano Ronaldo's first game as a professional player. For me, like, I was picking up like items like that for like much less than 3 figures.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, if you were talking about picking up the equivalent rookie card or rookie sticker, in the instance of someone like Thierry Henry, I mean, fair enough, it's not an Arsenal badge, yeah. but like, but it's a lot of money, especially for someone that's just entered, and it's kind of like, I don't really know what I'm doing here, and I don't know why I'm doing this, but yeah, I kind of find it cool, so I'm going to spend a bit of money. For me, like, tickets were just a really cool way of like dipping my toe in sort of collecting and not having to break the bank for it.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like, people sort of caught on a little bit, I think, about a year ago. Like, ticket prices, especially slab ticket prices, kind of went stratospheric for a short period of time, probably around January 2021. Prices really surged, and then they fell very, very quickly. And I think a lot of people were kind of entering the market there thinking, okay, oh wow, tickets is this brand new thing that turns out there's a market for. And I've got to be honest, I think there was a lot of kind of naivety, and people entering the market at that point kind of probably not doing their research first, and sort of going money first. And kind of, I think the thing about kind of cards is that you can probably get away with that to an extent, but with tickets, it's like, knowledge is power to an extent. And if how well attended things were, like games, if you consider the fact that not everything has really been graded for all that long, you can use that kind of to your advantage and not sort of overpay for things. Like, looking at my collection, there's probably only one purchase that I've ever made that's kind of like over 500 quid.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that sort of, for me, what I love about collecting tickets is that you can still kind of enter at really low prices and get stuff that's really cool. Because I do it all the time still. And it is a bit of a treasure hunt. Nothing's really handed to you on a plate nowadays, especially given how many people are hunting for the same sorts of things. But yeah, there's gems out there, and yeah, it's super fun to go out and find them.
I was going to say, I think the perfect thing you think that is the knowledge of the tickets, and that's why I think it's so good to have you on because naturally in the card world, people groan at an 8, thinking, it's not that good. A 9 is like
Yeah,
acceptable, and a 10
yeah,
is really what. And people, I think, at first thought that with tickets as well, that they'd see a ticket like a 3 or a 4, not realizing that is unbelievable condition for some tickets.
yeah,
Especially, I think I remember seeing, I think it was like a Pele from Santos, and it literally got a 1, and someone was like, "Oh, it's only a 1." It's
yeah.
like you say, it's just increasing people's knowledge on the ticket market.
Yeah, so I think for a long time, especially with tickets, people just grade them authentic because having one poor
Yeah,
or 1.5 fair kind of did them a disservice. And I think that's one of the things that I think a lot of card collectors still see nowadays, and they think, oh, well, I've got a ticket here. So it's the kind of Istanbul Miracle of Istanbul, signed by um, Rafa Benitez and Gerard. And it's graded as an authentic. And I think if you see that on a card, you instantly think, what's wrong with it?
yeah,
I think that's one of the things that I think crossover collectors who are coming into tickets kind of need to distance themselves a little bit from, because just because something's authentic doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with it. It's just because it might have a fold, and actually the person that submitted thought, well, actually, what's the point in getting fair or poor written on it? Like interestingly, back to what you said about kind of that realignment of sort of expectation with sort of an 8 or a 9. I think sometimes people don't really think about tickets in the way that maybe for me it's a case of some of these tickets I'll only ever see once, and quite frankly I couldn't give a shit what what the
yeah.
condition looks like, because if I'm passing up the opportunity to ever have it again, then I'm not going to quibble over the fact that it's not in pristine condition, because we were talking about your 8 earlier and how well preserved it is, but I know that when
Yeah.
I go to a football match, I do not keep my tickets in very good condition. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So I've got another one here, which is kind of, so this is enormous actually. By the way, I couldn't do that like Jake Paul thing that we were talking about earlier. Um, so this is Lionel Messi's Argentina debut. Um, it's only graded a 2, but it's a full ticket. So in the ticket world, kind of a full will be something that has the sort of like
Yeah.
appearance of an unused sort of ticket. So this still has its sort of like stub intact. And I think there's only about 5 graded. It's a game that took place in like Hungary. So I mean, you've not just got the kind of like, okay, um, it's going to be a difficult thing to find. You've got to kind of think, okay, well, how am I going to get into the like DMs of like someone that attended the game, because these sorts of things don't come up on eBay. So yeah, it's one of those things where beggars can't really be choosers with tickets. It's sort of, if you want the ticket, you will take it in any condition, because sometimes you don't have the option, like you don't have the luxury of choosing the grade that you're getting it in.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
a fantastic point. I think as well, what I was going to ask you as well is obviously there's some games are obvious for a significant reason, like you say, Messi's pro debut or Argentina debut. But there's have you found it that there's some niche games where people actually don't realize it's like a landmark
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
they just kind of just list it up, or they're like, oh, I don't really care about that. It's just a random game.
Yeah, so I think that's where a lot of the enjoyment is, like in terms of what people are listing on, say, eBay, is kind of almost like milestone hunting. So, you see that a lot where people are listing things in lots, and they haven't realized that one particular thing might actually be something that's probably worth the price of the lot on its own.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, then there might be things that people they're just trying to like get rid of them, and you're kind of doing them a favor because you're taking something off of their hands which they don't care for, and getting money for it, and at the same time you've got something that then is kind of a cool memento. Um, just thinking about whether I've got anything like that here, but I'm not sure I actually packed anything. That was super cool. This is probably the closest to one, and as an Arsenal fan, you might appreciate this. So this is this is a ticket from when Andre Arshavin scored
Very
four
cool.
at Anfield, right?
Yeah.
So and it's signed by him. So this I actually kind of got from an individual who kind of worked at UEFA, and a couple of us sort of know him, and he kind of goes to all of these like VIP type events
Yeah.
and takes like a folder full of tickets with him and gets them sort of signed. So I think I swapped him something like a Harry Potter card or something for this, and I was like, yeah, sweet. Um, but yeah, I mean that's quite a good example of a game where you remember an event taking place. So you know the indignant sort of like Arshavin running away, like kind of like disbelieving that it just scored four. That was kind of like that's an image that sort of people remember. Um, so yeah, I think sometimes it's a case of you don't necessarily connect the dots. Um, I know that Harry actually submitted a ticket to PSA, which was kind of Giroud scoring the Scorpion goal.
Yeah.
Like everyone remembers that goal, but do you remember who Arsenal were playing in that game? And it's like kind of, I mean, I couldn't remember off the top of my head, and yes, maybe an Arsenal fan will remember that it was Crystal Palace, but I think most people that you talk to probably won't. They'll remember the goal. And so, yeah, I think sometimes you'll see people sticking up that ticket on eBay, not really realizing the significance of the ticket itself, and then it becomes a bit of a treasure hunt, sort of trying to find it.
I was just
So
saying
yeah,
that literally, I was going to make a point, and it perfectly goes into it. For example, for me, for that game, I was in my season ticket, and the little card that I have is not as nice as a ticket. And so it must be a massive, not an issue now, but it's a massive hurdle now that probably 95% of the ground is mainly matched like actual season tickets. So you won't actually get the old fashioned paper ticket, which you normally do in the away end. So whereas I'd
yeah,
say maybe 20 years ago, you might have at least like 15,000 tickets to choose from. Now it's a very small number. And of that, most people just fold them up in their pocket, like you're saying, or even just kind of throw them away because they're not really that fussed about them.
yeah. I think you're right. I think it probably even when you go back a few like even like 30 years in some instances you're getting kind of like membership booklets with kind of like little stubs within them that kind of you will deposit for a game, and it's not actually a ticket. It won't say like the opponent on
Yeah.
it. It's just kind of a almost like a voucher to get in. um this this ticket here is a really good example of that. So this is from the game in which Man City won their first Premier League. So the Aguero sort of
Yeah.
moment, it's a sellout. It's at the Etihad. Um, you know, I don't think anyone that wasn't the season ticket holder is going to get a ticket to that. And this was, I got this from an away fan who was at in the QPR end that day. Um, so yeah, I think that it's happened for years. I think in a lot of these instances you'll be sort of given a membership card, and it becomes extraordinarily difficult to actually go and find a physical ticket anyway, if you're a fan, let alone if you're kind of like some sort of collector. So yeah, it makes the hunt kind of exhausting at some points, but also kind of quite fun when you strike gold. It really does, yeah, keep me busy.
I was
Or it
going to say,
certainly used to keep me a bit more busy than it did.
I was going to say, it's got to be rewarding, especially like you say, the so-called bigger teams that are now, especially like you say, your Man Cities, Arsenal, Man U's, where it's a high volume of season ticket holders, like you say now, with your season cards or even QR codes on your phone to get in. That it really does bring it back. It was even when I was talking to a Huddersfield Town collector about this ticket. Well, even Huddersfield Town at this game when they had it, obviously in 2008, they've got season ticket cards there now. So it's a little,
Exactly.
and I think it was probably about 1,800 to 2,000 away fans. So, and then you've got to think of the niche in that of out of the 2,000, how many know where their ticket is, and then out of that, who's actually going to give out? Because, like you say, for an Arsenal
Yeah,
collector, or even a Premier League collector, any football collector, it's quite a cool one to have. So, is there
yeah.
like is there certain ones that you find easy? Is it like more of your cup finals because they're normally still paper tickets that you find a bit more readily available?
So I would say cup finals, international games. So like international games is kind of a good one because um, by and large, you don't generally have a membership card if you're like an England fan. I mean, there might be a small pocket of fans that do, but actually, the vast majority of people who go to see England play at, say, Wembley, will be buying a ticket specifically for that game. So I find that international games and then World Cup games, World Cup finals, European finals, Charity Shield, anything like that, um, tends to be relatively attainable. It does tend to be your like Huddersfield versus Arsenal games, that are much harder to find because uh, unlike say um, people that sort of collect music tickets, like if you go to a gig, for instance, you're probably that's probably a bit of an event, I would say. Like someone like me, I mean, I used to go a fair bit in my youth, but like now it's probably an annual thing, if that, and I'm much more likely to keep the ticket.
Yeah,
Whereas if you're like a football fan, in years gone by, you might have like 50 from a season, maybe more. And it's kind of like, actually, a lot of people I think will just chuck them in the bin or put them in folders and actually probably never stick them up on eBay or anything like that. It takes quite a lot to get into kind of I think the minds of people that have attended games for that long. And actually then you find that people have a really strong attachment to them.
yeah,
So if kind of people have attended these games for years and years and they have never sold a single ticket, to sell one is almost as bad as selling the whole thing because it breaks the collection up. So yeah, it can be quite challenging actually a lot of the time. I found this exact issue when I was looking for kind of Jude Bellingham's pro debut. So his pro debut sort of took place um, in Portsmouth. So it was like Birmingham were playing away at Portsmouth in like a League Cup game really early in the season. But you've got the same thing. So Portsmouth fans all had season tickets or, had the free game because it was right at the start of the season, all QR codes, apart from if you're an away fan. And obviously, by the time I'm looking for this ticket, Jude Bellingham's had his number retired from like Birmingham City. Whether you believe in that or not, I think it's sort of he's held in a bit of, I think, folklore by a lot of Birmingham City fans. So it became a really difficult task. Now, I managed to find one, and it was from someone who kind of had kept all of their tickets, and I had to work really hard to get it from him. And the moment I did, there was about 10 that then popped up on eBay, all for less than I paid for this one. So sometimes, things like that happen. And actually, I just sort of take it on the chin because it's like sometimes you kind of just to just to end a chase, you have to pay the amount just to kind of be like, look, I'm putting this one to bed. I don't need to think about it anymore. Um, so yeah, I mean, that sort of stuff happens, and there's probably, I think, a good number of Jude Bellingham pro debuts out there at the moment. Um, yeah, to be honest, sometimes you just don't know what's going to be difficult. It isn't always what you would imagine though. It's kind of anyone that sort of made their pro debut in a cup game or a European game tends to be a little bit easier. It's those that sort of make it in like a midweek away football tie, and then it's like, God, I don't know where to begin on some of those. So yeah.
I think it's a great point what you're saying, especially like I'm like talking about like gigs, concerts, and then also other sporting occasions. Like for me, I'm lucky enough to have been to like Wimbledon and boxing fights, and you're still with them. They're holding on to, unless it's at the O2 Arena because you've got no chance getting a ticket for that place near. And I lucky enough, I managed to swindle. I went to the Carissa Shields fight at the end, to Savannah Marshall and Carissa Shields Savannah Marshall last year, and I was like, I've got the QR codes now. I went to the box office before it. I was like, look, and my phone's playing up. I need the, because I was like, this is quite an important event in boxing alone for women. So are you finding it sometimes easier to maybe find, obviously, like you say, without the attachment, because it's obviously for an event, other sports are maybe a bit more readily available than football for us to be able to find the tickets of?
Yeah, I think other sports can definitely be a bit easier. So I think there can be a lot of prestige sort of attached to some sports and having like a physical ticket. So like Wimbledon, I think is quite a good example of that. Like you actually see a lot of people with like debentures and kind of wearing them, and kind of the sort of prestige that sort of comes with that. Another one's like F1. So here I've got like Lewis Hamilton's
That's cool.
F1 debut, and that would have been worn basically on like kind of a lanyard
Yeah,
with like a clip at the top. And again, I think at the F1, that sort of thing carries a kind of like, even if it's unsaid, it does carry a level of prestige,
yeah,
if that sort of makes sense. So I think it's one of those where, dependent on the sport, you still see a lot of it. Now, I would say that kind of the thing about um, I guess the move to sort of digital or digitizing all of the tickets, I think it's slightly inevitable, and I do think that like kind of it's going to be things that aren't necessarily about the fact that it's physical that are going to drive it out. It's going to be things like, well, everyone's got a phone. It's just easier. It's kind of more sustainable. It's cheaper. It's probably going to be a lot more secure. So especially when you think about things like the 2022 Champions League final.
hmm,
So when you had all of these sort of Liverpool fans who thought they had real tickets, and some of them being kind of it was just chaos basically. And that's probably a scenario that's, in a way, for a lot of physically ticketed events, making digital tickets seem more and more attractive. And what I'd quite like to see perhaps is sort of a bit more of a move towards making kind of tickets more of a memorabilia. So some events have always done this. I know that for the kind of Qatar World Cup upcoming in a couple of months, you're going to be able to have the opportunity to buy your own ticket from the event. So whether I think that sort of slightly cheapens the point of a ticket, yes, maybe it does, but at least it's something physical that people could collect if they wanted to. It's not quite got the same sort of allure for me, but yeah, I mean, fortunately, most of the stuff that I collect is kind of old, and sort of, it's stuff that just pops into my head. It's like, oh, I wonder if that's got a ticket, and then I'll go off and have a look at it, or I'll be on eBay and I'll kind of have a look and see what tickets are up, and what's got a bid, and then decide off the back of that to sort of lob in my own bid, and then I'll accidentally end up with it. One of the many hundreds of tickets now I've got that I probably at some point need to grade, but at the moment they're still kind of like stuck behind me on one of those shelves. So yeah, it's one of those where I think yeah, digitizing things is inevitable. I quite like the physical side of it, and unfortunately for the stuff that I kind of collect, I think it will remain physical for a bit longer. So yeah.
yeah. I think that's what everyone likes to do now. But then it's what I think as well. It's obviously how I've always viewed tickets is rather than a card, like you can have form an attachment to a card because it's your right, but especially if you've got the connection, like you say, some people don't sell it, that it was your actual ticket. It, it's that bit more connection to, like for me, my Wenger one. The reason why it's that extra bit special is because it was my actual ticket, and it's like if that was a card, I'd be like, oh, it's cool, but I probably didn't
Yeah.
pull it. There's not really a story behind where some of these tickets, no doubt that you've experienced this, especially like some of them, like you say, or hand sign or everything to do with it, but some of these actually have history and stories behind them, which are probably more valuable in all due respect to the value of the ticket. That's what actually brings the value to it because it's been through a lot to get to that stage, and the stories probably of people getting to a fixture or what they've done after the fixture. You couldn't put a price tag on that.
I think it's a really important point is that like I would I would say that even when, and the vast majority of the tickets that I have, I haven't attended the games. And some people find that weird, and that's completely fine. I think I used to find that weird once upon a time. Collecting other people's tickets can be one of those. It's like, what are you doing? You've never attended the event?
Yeah.
But okay, I get past that. And actually, I quite like the attachment to the historical event that might a physical item might have. Now, I think what people underestimate is is because the hunts for some of these tickets are so hard that you think that once you've acquired it, it becomes disposable, and it absolutely does not. So, a good example here is Ayrton Senna's final race. So, incredibly like macabre sort of ticket to kind of own, and you know, it took me ages to find it, and it was kind of one of those things where it was miraculous that I ever did. It was sort of, a chance Instagram message to a complete random who sort of, was at the event himself and kind of didn't know about Senna's death until they got home because they were at a part of the circuit where, um, you know, um, the accident hadn't taken place, and this was pre-social media. It was 1994, so how would you know that an accident had taken place if you weren't at the right part of the track? So, there's this incredible story that's attached to it, and when he agrees to let go of it to me, I kind of feel that sort of like slight sense of stewardship
Yeah.
around the ticket, and it's kind of incredibly like I feel incredibly like lucky to own it, but also that it's sort of one of those things that for me is I'm really attached to in a way that I'm not necessarily with a card.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I will be attached to some of my cards, but I think these things sort of have levels, and just because you weren't necessarily at the event doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have like a really strong emotional attachment to some of these pieces. And ultimately, I think that's probably why we collect. If you didn't have any emotional attachment, it would just and I probably see this more with cards than I do with tickets. You would probably have the mentality of I'm buying it for an investment, or I'm buying it so that I can sell it at a later point for kind of more money, and that's never really been of interest to me with a lot of these tickets. The kind of just wicked pieces that just want to keep and admire and share.
I was
So
going to
yeah,
say,
that's it.
I was going to say, they're how I would say as well is they're not just their pieces of history, but they're a great subject tool. So someone will see it and be like, "Oh, what's that? Why?" Like, whereas if someone see a card, they'd probably be like, "Oh, that's quite cool." But if they see a ticket, they'd be like, "Oh, that's quite. How comes that ticket's in there? Like, what? Why is that so important?" And I think that
It's
leads on to my next question of it's hard to define obviously an importance of a ticket as we discussed, but these are conversation starters, whereas cards can be. I've seen it with some of my mates before. They've gone, "Oh, that's quite cool," and that leaves it at that. But when I had this Wenger done, a lot of people then message me like, "Oh, that's really cool. Like, how did you get that?" Or it seems like there's a lot more people straight away because of the ticket. They've had their own tickets, and then straight away you can see their mind think of like, "Oh, I've been to this. I wonder if I can get that graded." Like, do you ever get that as well?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like I would say that cards can be aesthetically incredibly beautiful, and I collect cards as well, um, and I mean they bring me a great deal of joy. And usually, what I'm attracted by in a card might be it's got decent color match, or it's shiny, or I'm not going to beat around the bush. Sometimes it is as simple as it's a shiny one, and I quite like the effect on it. But with tickets, you're right. It can be a conversation starter. There's less awe strikingness about a lot of tickets. It might be that that there's a story behind it. That said, so at the last London Card Show, I set up kind of a stand, and you and Harry came along, and lots of other people came along, and there was one ticket that people kept grabbing people's attention, and it's this one. So it. I think it's a public unveiling of the Nintendo 64, and it's kind of like a random ticket. But I think what people are drawn by is that picture of Mario. It's like it is quite like an eye-catching thing.
Yeah.
So despite having some incredible tickets on display, this is the one that got all the attention. Um, and I mean, what I mean, Mario's instantly recognizable. He's sort of got that kind of, I suppose, we've all grown up with that computer game character. And yeah, it was a fantastic conversation starter. Like, I think it got about, 10 inquiries for how much was it for. And I was like, I wasn't actually planning on selling it. you know, I mean, to a degree, everything has a price, save for like a couple of things which are like absolutely untouchable. I will never sell it. Um, but it was quite interesting how many people gravitated towards that in place of like some of the other tickets that I had, and some of the other tickets are like, don't get me wrong, but they are like incredible, and that just looks cool in my opinion. I mean, it looks very cool,
Yeah.
and I have a lot more respect for it now actually since the show than I did before, because I was like, this is just kind of like a bit of a bizarre ticket to own. Um, so yeah, it's funny what ends up being a conversation starter. Often it's not what you think it is, and I think one of the things about cards is that the aesthetic value can be like really obvious,
Yeah.
and that can start conversations very quickly. Now with tickets, there is a bit more thinking sometimes that you need to do before launching into a conversation about something. And I mean, you look at something like this, it's like, yeah, that looks nice, but it's not the same as sort of like someone showing you like a rated rookie in a particular color. Like you can't be awestruck by that. I think you can be in a different sort of way, but yeah, there's an explanation that goes behind it rather than just like instant gratification from looking at it.
Yeah, like I say, I
Um,
think like just touching on that one, especially like compared like to a rated rookie, is because of like the UK is so card heavy in terms if you compared it to the ticket world of it's instantly recognizable. Oh, that's his rookie. Like people know what to look for. Obviously, they know what Mbappe to look for. They know what Messi to look for. Whereas someone could probably hold in their hand, say Mbappe's first ever game for Monaco, and they'll just be
yeah,
like, "Oh, that's a Monaco ticket." But it's like you say, it's not as recognizable straight away. If you know kind of thing with these tickets.
exactly. And it's I mean that's it. That's his Monaco debut. I mean, we talk about it, and it's like I can be holding it up for a while, and it's not as instantly recognizable as say his Panini foot or his kind of any of the sort of early cards of his, whether it's sort of like the adrenaline crack or the Topps Chrome or even the Father's Day
Yeah,
Panini thing or the Prism. It's kind of like for me the explanation of what it is not instantly recognizable with tickets, but I don't really mind that myself. I kind of think it actually that that sort of understanding of what it is adds that sort of like long-term attachment in a way that's probably a bit more disposable with something that's just aesthetically beautiful. um yeah, I think for me it would be incredibly hard for me to let go of the ticket because I know how rare it is.
yeah,
I know that with a Panini foot, if I had that sticker, I know that probably hundreds of other people will have a high grade card like sticker of that. So there's inherently just that little bit less attachment that I have with it.
yeah.
Um,
No,
but
so
it's very,
yeah,
I have to say, it's very easy for me to say that because I own the ticket but not the sticker.
yeah.
But I mean, if I had both, I like to think that I'd probably still gravitate towards the ticket. Um, but like I said at the start of this conversation, I don't have deep enough pockets to own this ticket sticker. So yeah, that's why I've got the ticket, I guess.
I think that's a fantastic point, and I think obviously the big announcement a couple of weeks ago was PSA. We've always wondering in the like the slats for the slabbing of packs and tickets whether obviously before it was a bit of what put people off basically was the price of it was a bit higher than obviously everything's always compared to cards even though it's a lot more strenuous to actually work out if a ticket's real and then going through all that procedure. But them announcing it goes to $30 for tickets. Sure, I've got a feeling that we're going to see, especially UK, because I know it's massive in the US, and we'll get onto that off this point. But do you feel like now the UK might actually not wake up in terms of tickets, but actually might start slowly getting the ball rolling a bit more on it? That A, it's $30, but B, now people have seen that being announced in the card world that they're going to start looking out for tickets to, even like I say, even to pair up with like a rookie card, rookie ticket, rookie card, like I say, it could work.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to sound like a bit of a dinosaur here because I guess 2.5 years ago when I started collecting, the prices back then were $20, and that was incredible value because when PSA shut down their bulk services for um for for cards and for stickers, tickets remained open, and so at that time, even though it took an awfully long time to get them back, myself and probably quite a few other prominent ticket collectors submitted something like 50. Like I submitted about 50, and they took about a year to come back, but they all went in at like $20. And that was great because like the stuff that you send in at $20 is not the same as the stuff that you send in at $50. And that's the point I think that we're talking about here, is that like grading is an absolute cost. And if you're doing it like so, I've got some pretty cool stuff behind me. Like so I've got, Amy Winehouse's last concert. I've got Tyson Fury's pro debut. I've got Cassius Clay's Olympic gold medal. Um, I've got the Hand of God. These are things that are incredible, but I want to keep them. I don't want to sell them. And actually, $50 is quite a lot of money. So I don't want to. I don't want to submit them. I'm selfish, So for me, there's that sort of like slight ulterior motive, which is I've been doing this for 2.5 years. I see myself doing it for a lot longer, and quite frankly, I'm so attached to some of the pieces that I own that anything that I send away for grading, I'm doing it for kind of protection, usually for security, and not doing it so that I can resell it. And if you acknowledge that that is the case, then any $50 submission becomes an absolute cost. And so, yeah, $30 is brilliant because it means that instead of sending away 6 tickets, I can send away 10. Now, what I'd like to see is it go even lower and perhaps some competition from the likes of, Beckett or whomever starting to do tickets might well help. A little bit of a price war might not be the worst thing in the world. We've seen that to an extent with cards already. And I think, that the lower the prices go, the more people are open to submitting stuff that has maybe been just like waiting on a shelf to go. So yeah, for me, it's kind of one of those things where I feel like I had it quite good when I first started collecting because it was only like $20 a pop. And then it went up to 50, but the turnarounds are pretty decent. And then it went 50, but the turnarounds have been a bit slower. And now it's gone down to 30. Hopefully more people will submit, but I think it might take a little bit longer before people really start submitting en masse with tickets. And that's just a hunch I have. That's just like me taking into account my own collection. Like there's still probably quite a lot of stuff that I wouldn't submit even at 30. So a good example is like, I've got all of Usain Bolt's gold medals from, every Olympics that he ever won one at. And that's a set registry set on PSA's website. And I'd love to kind of compete with the other complete sets that are there. But quite frankly, I'm not going to pay, what would probably end up being 200 and was it 30 times 8, whatever that ends up, 240, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, $240 for the kind of like acknowledgement of doing that. So yeah, it's just sort of trading off things like that at the moment for me. And yeah, I think it's been quite nice to sort of begin to learn some of the inside track as to kind of like how things work on the other side now. So yeah, that's been cool, and I'm kind of I'll personally be grading probably more. It's just for me, it's less of an urgency thing. I'd like to see the kind of like ticket collecting grow as healthily as possible, rather than sort of that feeling of like, oh, if I grade this, I can flip it for 6 times what I paid for it. It's just like, yeah, great. It's like, after a while, if you do that, and not personally, that's just not for me. It's like kind of I don't, just because I like it. I've got, probably like a lot of people that collect, got a job that pays me money. And to be honest, the idea of like topping that up with a few flips here and there is probably more stress than it's worth. So actually keeping the hobby fun is what I like to do. And yeah, trying to submit some of these pieces as cheaply as possible is the way forward.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I was first getting into tickets, I realized when I was trying to find tickets, like looking at Arsenal or football ticket, I always really noticed at that time that it was so big in America. I was seeing like MJ, Michael Jordan's flu game, or his like third ring, or back to back, or his baseball debut, LeBron's titles at Cleveland, Miami, and Lakers, or you got like Babe Ruth tickets, and there's like a load of like very heavy in America. So obviously now that you've learned so much more about the is it a lot? Is it like really? Is it a few people in America that submit a lot, or is it just generally naturally being PSAs out there as well? It's in the country. It's a bit easier, in so to speak, if you don't have to like send it across the pond. Is it a lot more commonly accepted now that people actually go after tickets, whereas over here, I would say that 95% of people that if you even higher than that, if you put a slab in one hand of a ticket, could be a debut, or you give them a rookie, they will go for that rookie card. Is
Yeah,
it different in America, kind of thing?
it's a really good question. So I think the volume at which kind of North American collectors submit is a lot higher than kind of what European collectors will probably submit. So, when you think about how many tickets are probably like graded by the likes of, PSA monthly, we're talking maybe it caps out at sort of, it's at its peak, it's probably about 10,000 tickets a month.
Mm.
So, of that, I would say that a minuscule percentage is still soccer. Now, some of the collectors that I kind of become aware of have incredible collections. There's this guy, I think his name's Andrew Goldberg, and he's trying to get every single ticket from Michael Jordan's playing career. That's incredible. I mean, the idea that there's something like over 1,000 games that he played in. Now, I find that like incredible, but I also think that it gives you an idea of where European collecting habits are compared to North American. So I don't think I've heard of anyone trying to do the same for, say, Cristiano Ronaldo. I think, quite frankly, you're probably nuts if you're attempting to do that, right? But there is a precedent in that there's a guy who's collecting Michael Jordan's entire series of tickets from his playing career. I think it's a bit like, when you see someone trying to collect a kind of trading card set in a particular variant, it might be that I'm trying to complete Topps Chrome 2017 in red refractors only, and you think, bloody hell, that's going to be A, expensive, and B, are you ever going to complete it? And for me, I think I value perhaps my sanity a bit too much to kind of ever venture into the idea of doing these sorts of things. But I do know a few people in the UK, for instance, that have. So I know a guy, James, who has completed like I think the 2004 Invincible set for Arsenal. So both home and away games, which I think is pretty amazing actually, because some of those away games must be like pretty obscure. And also, I reckon there are quite a few people that collect that. If you're like a diehard Arsenal fan, that's probably like peak Arsenal, and you want that. Similarly, I know other people that are kind of doing the same for Man United 98-99 season, the treble winning season. So there's that. I know a guy, Iconic Football Tickets on Instagram. Follow him if you're not already. He's got an incredible collection, but he got, I think, every game that Kylian Mbappe played at Monaco, which is just like an insane sort of like type of thing to do. I mean, the closest that I've kind of got to this is sort of I've got every goal that Jude Bellingham scored for Birmingham City, but he only scored 4, and I got them all off of one person. So it's like it doesn't even feel that impressive in comparison. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's sort of, I don't know. I am in awe of people that can do that. I think it also shines a light on kind of where perhaps European collectors are compared to North American collectors who probably have been doing this for a bit longer, and have found their own pockets of kind of like creative sort of sets that they're going to make. I think it's wild though. I mean, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. But yeah, hopefully there's someone watching this that thinks, or hearing this that thinks, yeah, I'm going to try and do the same for my favourite footballer, get every single game that he played in. I mean, can you imagine how hard that would be? It'd just be impossible, I think.
I wouldn't
Every
know where
game,
to start.
every game that Wenger ever managed for Arsenal. Can you imagine how hard?
Well, I've got
Just
the last one, so I'm
You've
on
got the
track.
last one, exactly, yeah. Just another
Another
sort of 600 or so to go. I know,
1,000 to go. No, no.
1,000. It's just, yeah. I mean, I just, yeah, in complete awe of people who can come up with these mad ideas and then follow through on them and do it.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah,
I'm just thinking on top of my head, like different ideas. Like it could be really cool if someone done, like I said, as you said, you've got Tyson Fury's pro debut. It would be like cool his whole career in fight.
yeah,
Something like that would be so cool. And it's one of them that people
yeah.
would see it and be like, wow.
That's
Even like the
yeah.
athlete himself would probably see it and be like, yeah, you're mad, mate. Like I
It's
was the one fighting and I don't even want the ticket.
you won't- it's funny because like I mean, the funny thing about Tyson Fury's pro debut is it was on the undercard of like I think was it a Carl Froch fight,
Yeah.
and I've got the program from the Carl Froch fight, and he isn't even in program. He was like a late addition because they needed to find like some bloke to fight someone else. So you could have that, and in the end, I actually got it from like some old lady who had attended the event and kind of was like, "Yeah, sure, of course you can have the program and ticket." I think I offered a fair sum of money. I think it was like probably like about 150 quid because I've been looking for it for quite a while. Um, and yeah, I mean, a bit like with cards and like these mad rainbow type sets that people sometimes do, I always think you've got to start with the one of one. If you don't start with the one of one, you're making things hard for yourself. So it's almost like the same with the tickets. You want to start with probably the most expensive or most difficult to find. Usually the debut, maybe not always, but yeah, I've got to say, like, I feel like I cheated a little bit with that Jude Bellingham one because it was just all from the same bloke. I was like, yes, I've completed the set. It just definitely doesn't feel the same. So, yeah.
I was going to say that obviously you got some, like by the sound of it, some absolutely magnificent and some of them really hard to find. Is there any ones that you've been thinking about or even trying to find that you haven't found that you think are, I really want to get that one like located and into the
Yeah.
collection?
I'm gonna now. I'm just pulling up my eBay because I've got a bunch of saved searches, and some of them are like never triggered. I expect I could go a whole lifetime and none of them would trigger. But I'll read a few of them out, just because some of them are really fun. Um, so I'm looking for from the World Cup between um, Scotland and Argentina in 1978. And the reason I want that game is because have you seen the film Train Spotting?
Yes.
And there's a sex scene kind of like with and Archie Gemmell scores the goal in the background. I kind of want to get that ticket just so I can put like was featured in Train Spotting.
Yeah.
And I know that there's precedent for this sort of thing because there's people who have got the tickets from the baseball game that's played in like Ferris Bueller, and but the difficulty with that ticket is it didn't take place in a major city, so it's just like impossible to find it. And I know one person that's got it, and he's not selling it because he's Scottish, and props to him. But I'd love to have that ticket. What else is there on this list? So the Clash, the band, the Clash. The cover of the album London Calling
Yes.
has Paul Simonon smashing his guitar. Now, that took place in like a New York gig in 1979. And basically, there's loads of tickets for the night after, but not the night of the gig. So that's really annoying me. Yeah, I want that one. What else is there? There's a bunch of like, this one's cool. So like, I want the ticket from the Jamaican bobsleigh team
Yeah.
in 1988.
Very cool. That
And
one.
again, like that would be incredible. But so Calgary Olympics in 1988 probably should be tickets out there, but I've never seen a bobsleigh one, let alone for the right day. And then yeah, just kind of random stuff. I'd love to kind of like have the odd debut. So I've got Paolo Maldini's debut for AC Milan. That's never triggered. So this one as well. This one's really cool, I think. So the 1985 Black Ball snooker final.
Yes.
So again, like you think about snooker finals, tiny venues. The Crucible probably I don't know how many it holds.
It's even like 800, I think, if
I
that.
I was going to
Yeah.
say 800. It's tiny, like So to find a ticket for any snooker final, you're doing quite well. But then you think about like what's the greatest snooker final ever? It's probably that one.
Yeah.
And yeah, never come close. You see people selling programs, but the programs tend to be for the entire stretch of the event. So the 2 or 3 weeks that the World Championships are on in Sheffield. And yeah, the number of times I've like contacted one of them and said, "Don't suppose you've got tickets for the final?" And yeah, universally, no one's come back yet. But what a ticket! If you ever found that, and I mean, I wouldn't say that it's one of those tickets that would necessarily command a huge value at say auction,
No.
but like you tell people about that, that is an incredible ticket. You
Yeah.
can't just be kind of like not awed by that. And yeah, for me, that's sort of the things that I would hunt down if it came up. No value would be, like that's a
Yeah.
I'm winning that auction. Like, yeah, get the fuck out of the way. I'm paying whatever it takes to win that auction. So, yeah, it's those sorts of things. There's
That's just like tricked my brain of one of the tickets in my grade pile, and it's a ticket from the final day of the Open Championship when Darren Clark won at Sandwich, which I was lucky enough
amazing.
to be there. But now I'm like, it's such a niche, and it's one of them that there's probably 120,000 people out that one day, but it's the same thing again of how many people that ticket would come up.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's like you say, I never would have thought being a snooker fan myself as well, having the Henry Davis finals. Like it wouldn't trick, but realistically, it's one of the most important.
Yeah. And
Like
actually,
what?
like, I'm gonna go back here and just grab a couple because
It's
I've got a little if you just give me a second,
yeah.
I'll
I
just
was going to
grab.
say definitely this is going to be. I can guarantee you, every single person listening to this is now thinking of what tickets they want to buy, but B, they're going to be going in their loft in every like program they've got to try and find some of the tickets because, like I say, it's so cool what you
So
can. Definitely,
yeah,
I've actually put a whole day aside one of the days this week to go through all my old programs to try and find some of the tickets because I know definitely there's some out there I would love to get. I actually was on the Discord channel. One of my friends sent this to me the other day, and I was absolutely gutted. Someone had purchased Granit Xhaka's professional
oh yeah, yeah,
debut,
yeah, yeah.
and I
I
was like,
mean,
"Oh, what I would give for that ticket!" Because even though it's not, wouldn't be us. I'm like, I think it was in Hungary against like
yeah.
it was Europa League fourth, like I think it was like even like the fourth team in Budapest, and it's
Yeah.
like that's what I say. It's just amazing to think about, and it does open the doors up that whereas snooker cards it not really existing. Obviously, they used to have the cigarette cards that were big, or you get them in the question of sports, but the actual tickets they've always
Yeah,
been
yeah, yeah.
there. And like you say, O'Sullivan's first title, I think that would be a really cool one as well. And
That would be
this is for
cool.
every sport as well. Like,
I was like, so I was just digging through a bunch of things that I want to submit eventually, but I haven't gotten around to. And basically, your like open ticket is really cool because it's a paper ticket. But the thing again about when we were talking about our physical tickets beginning to die out or um, what's going to happen when everything moves digital. The golf's another really good example of like kind of events where uh, there's always been a bit of prestige,
yeah,
like especially if you are one of the badge holders. So I've got this, which is like a badge from the 1998 was it 1999 Open,
yeah,
and that was the event in which like basically I don't know if you remember, but um, is it Jean van der Velde? Is it van der Velde? He like basically choked. He like kind of, choked at like the last hole. He had like a 3-shot lead and basically kind of, I think he hit it into, I don't know, it was like he like shanked it a couple of times and hit it like water trap or something like that. And um actually, I mean, the funny thing is that like you see tickets like this in badge form, with the like little string that's kind of holding them together. They look amazing in kind of the sort of PSA slabs. So yeah, definitely, I would say with the Darren Clark one, like one option you had is slab the paper ticket, but I reckon for 2011, the Open, you can probably find like one of these like really
yeah.
sweet looking like badges, and they look amazing when they're slabbed, in my opinion. So yeah, have a look out for those. They're probably not that expensive. If Tiger Woods wasn't winning, then they will be, relatively affordable. And so yeah, that's always a kind of one of those things where people will gravitate towards the obvious ones, but often it's the random ones that are so cool to sort of collect and can be bargains a lot of the time.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, with moving. Obviously, I see this week you announced that you are working in partnership PSA now, which is congratulations, it's amazing, and I think that's a testament to the work that you've put in researching tickets. Like I say, I have all I know is the games I was at. So God knows like how you even go about learning everything else. So how like A, congratulations, but B, it must be a true test. Like you actually got to feel gratified because you've put the work in, and actually to be recognised by a PSA must be some of the long late nights must be worth it.
Um, yeah, so I mean that whole situation's like super surreal. Um, if I'm absolutely honest with you, like if you told me 2.5 years ago that I'd be working for PSA as an authenticator for tickets, I'd have just said that sounds bonkers, and no, I won't. It's probably what I would have said. Um, but I mean, I think it's relatively well known that PSA's one of PSA's main ticket guys kind of moved to Beckett, and I think he's. My understanding is that he's been poached essentially, and what that led to, I think, for a short amount of time, was that soccer in particular, but other European sports to to an extent, were kind of finding it like quite hard to kind of begin to get through the same processes at PSA. Um, so, actually, I think there was quite a lot of frustration from people that I know who were submitting kind of like orders that were really well documented, and those were just being turned around and sent back to sender after having been in some cases at PSA for a couple of months. And yeah, it must have been like really, really frustrating. And out of the blue, somewhat, I got a message from a fellow ticket collector who've got like immense respect for. So a guy called Michael Horn, and his collection on Instagram is vintage.tickets. And Michael got in touch and said, look, I I've been asked by someone at sort of PSA to recommend someone that knows about soccer tickets, and um, I've mentioned your name. So if you do hear from this person, give them a kind of um, a call back. I don't really know what they're going to suggest, but that, and at the time I was like quite apprehensive. I was sort of like, well, look, I definitely couldn't just like up sticks and kind of go to the US. That just wouldn't work. And I've got a full time like career in the UK, and this is something that I do for fun. I do it for fun, and the idea that kind of I'd start to professionalize it just isn't something that it's not really for me. If that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, I had a call, and then I kind of gave my email address, and then I got started talking to the chief of staff at PSA, and they kind of contacted me, and we had a sort of chat, sort of half-hour chat, in I think early December, and then they followed up kind of I think early January and said, look, we'd really like you to meet the head of tickets. And they told me what they were proposing, which was sort of this remote sort of scenario where I would be kind of authenticating what was fake, what was real, using kind of extremely like high resolution images, um, and kind of doing that remotely in sort of a pattern that might be amenable with my like day-to-day work situation. I mean, I've got a full-time job, I've got a young family. There's very little of my day that I kind of have free. But yeah, I mean, we spoke about it logistically, and we found a solution that sort of works for everyone. And it's kind of amazing because I've been doing it for just a week like now, and I've virtually met a lot of the members of the team, and it's it's amazing because you see what other people are submitting as, mate. It's incredible. So like I mean, I'm so glad that they thought like that my name was put forward in the first instance, and then secondly, I'm so glad I didn't like just duck out and say, actually, I think I'm just a bit too busy, because it's been super cool seeing what people submit. And actually, I mean, when you see as many football tickets as kind of I've looked at over the last couple of years, it becomes incredibly easy to do aspects of the job. You can spot sort of like at 20 paces certain things that you would find triggering on a particular ticket. So, you know, um, there's there's kind of like a level of expertise that you don't even realize you've kind of built up with these sorts of things. And then there's also kind of like just the awe strikingness of like what other people are submitting, and it's just like, wow, how did you manage to get that? Or it's just incredible. So yeah, I think the plan is that I'm going to get even more involved in the sort of research side of things as well, or I'd like to as well. So I think confirming sort of like milestones and things like that. And then there's some talk of going out to California to sort of like meet the team. Um, and yeah, I mean, that would be wicked just because it'd be a trip to California. I've never been to the West Coast before. Might take a few of my subs with me, that sort of thing. Um, and yeah, I think I kind of have sort of just kind of taken it a little bit like it's just super flattering to be kind of like asked firstly, and then secondly, it's just been super cool. Um, so yeah, everyone that I've spoken to seems really nice, and yeah, it's just strange and surreal. Like back to that, like kind of 2.5 years ago when I just started this, I never have thought that this would be kind of what I would be doing, or this would be the level of like kind of involvedness in this whole process. So yeah, it's kind of mad, super mad, and kind of it is just really weird, really weird to kind of like put it like when I tell my friends, they're like super like they just can't believe it. They're like, I started collecting tickets and now I'm getting kind of like paid to authenticate them. Seems ridiculous. Like, I mean, you tell someone out of context that, and that that does sound mad. So yeah, it's sort of that gig is going quite well at the moment. I think I'm only a week in, but I don't think I've kind of accidentally graded like a fake ticket or anything yet. So we'll see. I'm sure that won't happen.
As I say, it
It's,
sounds like but sure, like you say, when you see other people's gems that it's got to be tempting. And then you're like, oh, I really want to get one of them, and you're going to get to a point where you see one of them, you're like, I know that's the only one that's probably ever been surfaced, and now you're going to have to try and find a second one.
yeah, well, I tell you the other thing is that's quite funny is that you can like I mean especially because as I said earlier, like soccer tickets submitters are, I mean, it's a niche within a niche, really. And you can kind of work out who people are, like who the people that have sent certain things are in, because with some of them, it's just like, how on earth have they found that? And then you're like, that can only be one of like two people, and then it's actually again, it becomes a treasure hunt within itself. You're trying to work out who submitted it, and yeah, it's super cool. And yeah, the team seem really nice, and um, as I say, I'm still early days in it, but yeah, it was just like as I say, just super flattering to be asked, and um, I think I said very very early on to one of them that look, I'll do whatever I can to help. And that's always been the mantra here is kind of like I kind of want like ticket collecting to sort of grow, and I I I personally want more people to sort of grade as well, and I don't want it to be seen as niche. And I think probably a sign of that is that they've kind of asked me to do it. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, so I kind of do it remotely from the UK. It's pretty amazing, really. So yeah, it's a sweet thing to do at the moment. Enjoying it.
I was going to say, I really do hope to see, like you say, I really hope to see, especially now the pricing's coming down as well, that there's some really cool tickets that are sitting in people's lofts, in their cupboards that would, to me and you, it would be, see, as soon as we see it, we'd be like, oh, that's really cool. But
Yeah,
like, for example, for an Arsenal fan, for myself, I probably got tickets that I need to find. And like you say, like the Asharing games, them type of historic moments that you really remember it. Like, I was at the game at Old Trafford when Wenger famously got sent off and he stood on top of the benches
yeah,
with his arms out. So, like,
yeah, yeah.
even that one, we lost the game, but that would be really cool because you could have the picture behind it of him standing up with his arms out, which is now an iconic picture. So, like you
Yeah,
say,
and
it's just knowing the tickets as well.
yeah, and I think a lot of the time, it's moments like that that sort of like resonate with fans more than anything. I think one of the things that the hobby in general has always really, I think, and personally, I think that the hobby and when I say the hobby, what I really mean is that Topps and Panini and whomever have kind of like they've gotten to a point where they're just kind of I don't know, it's just a bit boring. It's like churning out the same products like year after year, and it's like okay, I kind of yeah, it's great to collect Arsenal again, but like actually what I want as a as someone that like really likes sport and likes to watch it is that feeling that like the people, the manufacturers get that.
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, like I don't support a Premier League team. I support Wycombe Wanderers, but like some of the people that like I know that support local football teams are some of the most devoted fans you will ever meet.
Mm.
And it's like, can you imagine how cool they would find it if something tapped into that psyche rather than just concentrated on the top level?
Yeah.
Because at the moment, that's where tickets have a massive edge on like cards. Because quite frankly, if I'm like a Cambridge United supporter and I want to collect every ticket from, say, the 1972 season, I can go away and do that. And there's nothing from the card world that can replace that. So I do think that like there's a real avenue when you talk about like moments that resonate to you as fans, the manufacturers aren't really tapping into anything there. And people will say, oh yeah, but Tops Now and whatnot. It's like I agree with that to an extent, but when you think about something like Tops Now, it gets watered down to the point where you know some bloke making a challenge for the first time it deserves a card. It's just like that's not really what I'm getting at. What I think kind of you know tapping into the psyche of real fans is the way that you grow the hobby. And for me, I think you know I don't see much of that actually at the moment in the card world, which is a bit sad. I think it's kind of you know just another curated set or just another prism. It's like great, okay, where's the innovation? Where's the like real forward thinking here? And how do we kind of really make this a mass market product? So yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where I can kind of I pick and choose what I like a little bit, but yeah, I'd love to kind of have a go at Tops and Panini next and say like, you know, what can we really do here that really enthuses people?
Yeah.
Because
And I think
I'm
it's a
just
great
not
point.
that enthusiastic. I'm not that enthusiastic about like, oh great, another release of Chronicles, fantastic. You know, it's like a bit too samey for me.
As I said, and my
Um,
last question, because I
go
think
for it.
I think you've covered it so well, and I think it's going to get a lot of people really into the ticket world. Is that I think you'd see some people, it's just like touching on, be like, oh, it's not really a significant game in terms of, oh, it's not a Haaland debut. But tickets is different. It's whereas cards, their first cards are really significant. Tickets is not always about the value, what it is of the actual ticket alone, but more of the what's the story behind. Like someone's first game, get that graded. Like you say, that what I think is fantastic is the amount of teams there are in England, not just as a lot of people see it as in the top 20 in the Premier League. You've got the 92 or in the Football League, and then it goes down all of the way below. And there'd be some teams that sadly, I'm thinking off the top of my head here, like a Bury, for example, that sadly are no longer what they used to be and have been reformed. But there's so much history there that their fans, because they know that they're a very long way off at the moment getting trading cards, that these are
It's,
perfect pieces of history to capitalize. But more important, like you said, which brings it all in a massive round, is to protect them as well,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
main thing.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you think about some of the most prominent footballers in world football at the moment. They did not start off at the top league. So Harry Kane started his playing career at Leyton Orient. You know, if you're a devout Harry Kane fan, for me, you know, having the grail ticket for me for him would be his Leyton Orient debut because that's where he started his career. You know, similarly, I think you know if it's it is a bit of kind of as you say, like there are aspects about kind of preservation and kind of holding on to things because you care about them, and I think that's the aspect of ticket collecting that kind of I think I quite like. Well, I like it most is that, and to an extent, cards is like this as well. No two collections are the same, so it's like your collection will be different from mine, and that doesn't matter because we're both collecting what we love. And tickets is exactly the same. It's like there's no edict about what you have to go out and collect. You go and collect exactly what you want to collect. And if that is, you know, non-league stubs or whatever, you go and do that. That's absolutely fine. If you want to collect every single Michael Jordan game, mate, you can go and do that. Like that's a formidable kind of achievement. And you know, it's not for the faint of heart, but like there's no right way of doing things. Um, apart from maybe in cards, you don't go and collect match attacks because that's for kids, right? But yeah, I suppose that's what I'm kind of getting at is that there are similarities there. You go and do whatever you like with cards. It's exactly the same with tickets. You go and collect kind of if you want to collect European Cup finals, you go and do that. That's cool. Um, yeah, and that's that's what makes it kind of the hobby, right? Like we all go and collect what we love.
And even cooler now that if someone does send in, you'll be seeing it, so you'll be
Yeah,
able to have a
yeah,
look at it.
exactly. I'll be trying to work out who submitted it, who listened in, and yeah, exactly. Trying to work out who sent it in. Yeah,
I was gonna say,
definitely.
it's been a very eye-opening episode, and I think our viewers are really going to enjoy listening to it and broadening our horizon and myself of the actual ticket world. So all I can say is thank you ever so much for joining us, and you're more than welcome to come on anytime. Because no doubt, in 8 months to a year's time, some of the stuff you would have seen is cool, but hopefully there might be
Yeah,
some of them. And I'm going to say that there's going to be stuff that happens within this next 8 months that you're going to
yeah.
have to try and find the tickets of.
Yeah. Gosh, you almost. I mean, it's the thing about tickets, is it? You don't. Well, you know, it's the thing about sports in general. You don't know what's going to become an event until it's sort of happened. You know, so yeah, it might well be that in 8 months' time there are a whole series of things that I want to get. You know, not least something like Arsenal's first Premier League title in 19 years or however long it's been. Is it 19? Probably about 19,
Yeah,
right?
18. Yeah, 18.
18. Okay. Well, there you go. You know, maybe that's a ticket that every Arsenal fan will want, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, it's stuff like that. There's a lot of things where you think, yeah, I'm not 100% sure what will become a moment that is absolutely must have. Like, you know, a lot of people have been buying up kind of the 2022 World Cup final. You know, not for me because the prices are a bit high, and I kind of think there's going to be loads out there. We'll get one when the prices fall a little bit, but yeah, maybe in 8 months' time to a year, we'll come back and I'll let you know how I've got on and what I bought. It would just be crap, though. I can guarantee you now, 99% of what I buy, it's things that I see on eBay and I think, yeah, I don't really need that, but I think I'd like it in my collection. And that's why I've got like a load of tickets which I still haven't sent off. So maybe I need to send a few more of them away. Yeah.
Like I say, it's thank you very much for joining us. We wish you all the best with PSA with your new role and also finding them tickets. And I will be looking out for a Crucible Black Ball final ticket for you,
Yeah, I mean that would be
preferably
amazing.
in a pair because I quite fancy one.
Yeah, exactly. Get everyone searching for one of those.
Yeah. But like I say, thank you
Brilliant.
very much for joining us, and you're more than welcome to join us anytime. And no doubt that there'll be quite a few people I think after this will be looking through their tickets and hopefully sending them off for you to have a look at in the long run. And it's be great to see more people getting into the ticket world.
It's a pleasure to be here, and yeah, thanks a lot for inviting me on. And yeah, get ticket hunting, everyone.
It's an absolute pleasure. That was a fantastic episode, really fun one to record and enjoy. But just a reminder, go to the Instagram. TicketsandSlabs will be in the comments below on the YouTube. Everything's below where to be found. But also head over to our Instagram page for our post on the giveaway for London Card Show tickets, because make sure you're there for the weekend because it's going to be great. But limited tickets are available, but we have 2 VIP tickets up for grabs. But most importantly, hope everyone out there is having a lovely time. Please stay safe. And most importantly, happy hobbying and good night.